Somebody just put a super chat and they said, what happened to Nick Fuentes? If you want to address that.
Nick Fuentes was a user who we removed from the platform, and he was inviting people to be a part of his a group that I think is pretty clearly racist and doesn't fit within our terms of service. And look, you're never going to get everything perfect. You're going to have people who are critics from different sides, but I'm not going to allow GETTR to become the OK Cupid of the white nationalist set. I'm just not.
What did Nick Fuentes say? What group was it?
So the Groypers.
Okay, I got it. So Nick, if you want to pull up his Wikipedia, Nick Joseph Fuentes is an American far-right and white nationalist political commentator, live streamer. The Anti-Defamation League has described Fuentes as a white supremacist, a former YouTuber. His channel was permanently suspended in February 2020 for violating YouTube hate speech. Got it. So it's not like you kicked off. Fuentes has feuded with Turning Point USA and its founder, Charlie Kirk, for supporting views that Fuentes believes to be insufficiently conservative. On October 2019, followers of Groypers began heckling Turning Point Culture War tour, including a speaking event for Donald Trump Jr. Okay, got it. So it's not like you kicked off a liberal. You kicked off somebody that would be a far-right person that you kicked off of GETTR.
Look, and I don't even think it's an ideological thing. I mean, I think when you're
But it is, though, because Twitter, most people would say a lot of people that Twitter kicks off are people that are on the right, not necessarily a lot of people on the left. That's what I'm saying.
But I think there's a difference between someone who is actively preaching or recruiting for white nationalism versus, say, a political ideology. In my opinion, it might be arguing over semantics on this one, so maybe I'm looking at it too narrowly. But again, GETTR is a platform where we do have terms of service that are pretty clearly stated. We don't have any tolerance for racial or religious epithets. We don't have pornography. There's plenty of places to get porn.
Twitter's got a lot of pornography.
Twitter's got a lot of pornography.
In fact, your friend followed me yesterday. Twitter allows you to put pornography on
porn. Okay, gotcha.
And
you know what porn is? Porn is like Pornhub. Like
we can check it out.
Wait, so, it's what?
how do you? With that being said, how do you balance hate speech and freedom of speech? Where does the line go?
That's a good question because it's leading me to the next question.
Okay. Yeah, so a really good question. And again, we think what we've found with GETTR is the sweet spot of the bat, where we allow people to express themselves politically, where they know that they'll never be censored, algorithmed, deplatformed, shadow banned, any of that nonsense for expressing their political beliefs, whether you're on the left or the right, or some people join the platform aren't even that into politics. Maybe they just don't like big tech, or they're inherently distrustful of it, and they want to try a new platform. So typically in most Western countries, your free speech rights extend right up to the point where you start to infringe on someone else's rights. Obviously, things such as doxing, which we had to go and suspend a very popular account for doxing just the other day. They put up someone's address, and we had to go and take that down. That's not something we put up with.
What is this term, doxing?
Doxing is when you go and put out, say, publicly identifiable or publicly sensitive information. So you can't post somebody's, say, home address and say, hey, we dislike this person, here's their home address. Like that's what you'd call doxing. Or here is someone's credit card number, or here's someone's social security number. That's the kind of thing that's doxing. Or the other thing too, if someone's outright pushing for illegal behavior or threatening self-harm, for example, if someone said, hey, go out there and if you cut your left arm off, you can cure COVID. Okay, that would be the type of thing where that would be something that would potentially lead to self-harm. But your point, Adam, that you bring up is there's always going to be that rub between a free speech purist who says any restriction, wait a minute, are you being hypocritical? Or people are saying we want to make sure that we keep the platform safe. And again, we're never going to get it right 100% of the time, but our only ideological driver is the fact that we want to make sure that we support free speech and that we oppose cancel culture. So there's no political discrimination that goes into it like the big tech platforms where they pick winners and losers based on whether they agree with you.
Well, what did Nick say that got him kicked off? What was specifically? What was the message he sent?
He posted a message that was effectively recruiting people or trying to identify with, trying to organize who are additional Groypers that were on the platform.
What's wrong with that?
Because then you're inviting, then that's trying to organize people who are white nationalist group that we think doesn't fit with our terms of service.
Okay, so you got to realize I don't agree with what he agrees with. The part I'm thinking about is if your position is free thinkers, you're pushing that off, then somebody may say, well, there is criteria to it. So,
and the one thing, Pat, just to be clear here, there are there are plenty of places where you can go and preach white nationalism. And if you want to go and preach white nationalism, then you can go to a different platform. It's your choice as a consumer. We believe that our community does not want to see that. We believe that if we're going to scale, if we're going to be a true competitor to big tech, these are the parameters that we're going to keep people safe within this. And hey, some people are going to agree with it, some people aren't. But what we're providing is so much different and so much better than any of the big tech platforms.
And it's not fully free thinker, though. Then it's not fully free thinker, because you're not allowing me to think for myself that I disagree with the guy. It is free thinking to a limit, because let me explain what I mean by that.
Every platform is
and that's
going
leading
to
me
have
to.
some
So, for example, I like interviewing communists. Genuinely, one of my favorite interviews. When I have a guy I'm sitting with that's a communist, I enjoy that interview. I know it sounds weird, and I've not done one, not two, not three. Any major name that's a communist, I want them sitting here. The only reason they're not, or I haven't interviewed them, is because they've said no, not because I haven't invited them. I enjoy talking to them because I want to know what makes you think the way you do, and I'll let the audience say, screw Pat, I don't agree with him, that was unfair, or you know what, I don't agree with the other guy, I agree with Pat, great, but they get to make a decision for themselves. The part I think about, what gives us a lot of confidence in America? What gives you and I a lot of confidence to live in America? It's a piece of paper, right? What is that piece of paper called?
Constitution.
The Constitution, right? And why is it so powerful? Because I can't just erase it and say, you know what? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about this part. The Constitution is, here's what the founding fathers founded this country on, right? I think you're a small virtual government right now. But you got 5 million people living there. You're a small state, essentially. If you think about it, what's a state with 5 million people? Idaho, I don't know the number, but 5 million you're a state, right, essentially. Or you're a small country, okay? That's out there. But 5 million is 5 million. And you are a virtual government, essentially. You are a virtual nation, essentially. So is Twitter, so is Facebook, so is YouTube. That's what you're building. I think the right way to do it, it's just my feedback. You can take it, you cannot take it. I just give them the feedback. Is to put a constitution out there saying, these are the things that will never be changed. And here's what we're putting on paper. So I go to the website and say, this is GETTR's Constitution. This is what we'll tolerate. This is what we won't tolerate. So I had a meeting at Jekyll Island. Mm-hmm. And I pulled my guys aside and I took them out there and I'm showing them Rockefeller's house and I'm showing them all these guys' house. And it's a very good experience if you've been to Jekyll Island. And in the room where the federal, the Federal Reserve got started with the whole meetings and all that stuff in 1906 or when it became official, we're in the room, we're having all these conversations, a sense of the historic. And I said, I want us to write out our Constitution of I, we, never. Okay? So I will, ... We had 13 I's, we had 13 we's, we have 13 nevers. So the I is, I will set the best example as a leader. Okay, it's I's, right? The we was, we collectively will do X, Y, Z. The never was, never will we compromise, ... Never will we accept, ... Never will we do. The reason why I share that with our field force is because if somebody sees that and they say, yeah, I don't like it, they leave. But if somebody sees that and they say, oh my God, this is home. I'm here to stay. And not only am I here to stay, I'm going to tell the world about the I, we, never, right? I'm going to go tell the world about this whole thing. I think the right virtual government, to do it the right way, is to create a constitution that they themselves will be held accountable if they cross the line with that constitution. I may be wrong, but I think it's very important for the user to have trust with you.
I completely agree. And I think that to that point, so we have our terms of service, which largely, I mean, it's a contract. It's the one thing that people sign or that they check off when they join anything, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or
yeah, but
GETTR,
nobody reads terms of service.
I was about to say that.
But so,
zero.
So
right?
To that point, that's obviously very legalistic and very. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it reads legalistic is because it's your contract. So we just hired a brand new director of moderation who's going through and actually putting together the formal community guidelines that'll have very specifics of rules of the road, essentially. I think that'll probably take, it's written now, but we're just going through some refinement. A few weeks, we'll have that posted. So to your point, that will then be our constitution that we post with more granular, more kind of real world details of kind of the do's and don'ts for the platform so people fully understand it. And like I said, look, we're not going to get everything right every time. We're going to continue to grow. There are different dynamics, different situations that come up. And I knew I was going to spend a lot of time on moderation when I took on this challenge, especially after the deplatforming of January 6th and everything. I didn't maybe know I was going to spend quite this much time on moderation. And keep in mind, right now we're largely talking about the U.S. I'm dealing with on the global level. So then I'm dealing with the Ofcom with regard to the UK. I'm dealing with the German law enforcement. I'm dealing with people in all around the world. And look, GETTR is, and one of the kind of the unique things about it, we're only 50% US. And prior to the Rogan explosion, Rogan and Tucker coming on board, we were only 37% U.S. I made the commitment when we launched this thing, this is going to be a global platform, not just because of where I wanted to go for scale, but also to make sure it wasn't an American echo chamber. And so Brazil is about 15%.
Brazil second?
Brazil second.
Who's third?
So UK is third at just below 10. Germany is right behind them, and France is right behind them. And then Japan is Japan and Canada are like number 6 and 7. And so the countries where we have teams where we're out working, obviously the US, Brazil, UK, France, Germany, and then I just expanded this quarter for Japan, India, and Colombia. And so those are kind of our big targets.
I think India is good for you. I think India is good for you because there's a lot of free thinkers in India, and their enemy is also the same enemy, which is China. They're not a fan of China. They banned 100 apps in China.
And so to that point, it's almost like we synced up beforehand. The drivers where we found in a lot of our international markets where we're targeting, obviously you can get us globally unless the government's blocking it. Actually, literally the day we kicked off, I think we had 10 or 20,000 people sign up from Venezuela. And then after that first day, going silent.
Yeah.
They just was like,
that
no,
makes sense.
No one else is getting in. But what we found is proximity to communism and socialism is a huge driver. So, for example, people in Colombia and Brazil, where you're seeing all the people fleeing from Venezuela, are massive drivers. South Florida, where you have such a big Cuban-American community, massive GETTR user base. People who are concerned about India, as you said. Also, elections that are coming up in countries where there are elections in 2022. You see a lot more political activity. People are kind of supercharged and paying attention to it. And then, of course, the big one is where you have both big tech and governments who are coming in and trying to silence people. And there's a huge difference. I mean, you take a look at Colombia, which literally has a no censorship clause in their own constitution, or it's essentially an amendment that they added. Colombia. Brazil doesn't have their version of a U.S. First Amendment. They do not have any aspect of free speech, which kind of blew my mind. This is a major democracy, certainly in South America, a big power. I mean, there's supermarket to the world when it comes to the beef markets and other things. You have the single biggest Japanese community outside of Japan, and they don't have that. In fact, I met the deputy, Carol Detoni, who's writing their version of the First Amendment, and I was like, wait a minute, you guys don't have that? She goes, nowhere in our Constitution does it protect it. We take for granted our First Amendment rights, ability to express ourselves. I mean, obviously, look at your background where you grew up.
No question.
I mean, people get killed for being on the wrong side of the street. It's pretty nutty.
So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.